Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to our webinar for the second time on shoe selection with Ivan Muller. I will not take a lot of time. I will let Ivan introduce himself and the webinar and the topic, and I hope you enjoy it. Please pose your questions. You can put all your questions on either the questions tab or even on the chats tab, and then I will pass the questions on to Ivan at the end of the session. Enjoy it. Go ahead, Ivan.
Thanks a lot, Rana, and welcome
You're
again,
welcome.
as Rana said. And thanks again for letting me be able to present the work that I do with Digital. Just to make a small disclaimer, I'm not paid by Digital. I work with Digital as an external consultant, primarily due to my experiences with it, and as I see it as a very interesting tool for me in the clinic in daily use, working with people who are primarily active in running and walking. So that's the object for me working with it. And one of the things that are interesting in that matter is the shoes that people walk, because they are, anyway, we want it or not, a part of many people's setup for walking and running. So that is the primary aspect for this night, to talk about how I use digital in the aspect of helping people to select their proper running shoe or walking shoe in relation to that. My background is that I'm originally a physiotherapist, graduated in the late 90s, had my 25th anniversary just last week, so it's been some years. And I also have an osteopath education and a master's degree in osteopathy, just recently coming out of an Austrian university. So that's my background, physio, osteo, and for like almost all my career, having focused on active people, both in regard to elite levels, but also any plain people trying to do whatever they want to do to be active in general, and trying to help them in the best way. Along with that, with the tools that we have with our minds and our clinical hands, but also with the proper digital tools that we can address today. So that's the aspect. I'll just share my presentation here. Oh, there we go. There we are. So I think you should be able to see the presentation here. Yeah. So the topic of today is digital gait analysis to help shoe selection using AI-based motion analytics. That's the very technical and conform headline of today. So as I said, my name is Ivan Muller. I'm a physiotherapist and osteopath, Masters of Science. I'm situated in Copenhagen, Denmark, where we have our clinic. Clinic.dk is the webpage, and our everyday workplace. So just to give you a short information on what Digital is as a product, it's based out of France, in Nancy, and it's been there since 2015. And it's a kind of accessory to work with, easy for us in regard to application and comfort and accessibility for our analysis, to help us in our clinical evaluation of our patients, our clients, our customers, however we want to address them. So that's the main perspective with artificial intelligence, our clinical setting, and a tool that combines these settings into this idea to help us. So, and currently 700 people are using these Digital Pro in the Europe. So who and what patients are we able to help with them? Well, the big helicopter view is everybody, more or less, but of course people will be who are able to walk, and in my perspective is primarily people who are in an active state, so it can from youngsters to elderlies. And in my typical world or everyday life, we work with people who are active runners and trekkers and walkers. So I'm a bit biased in relation to having people who are able to do this, but are having sports injury-like situations. But the Digital Pro is also very nice done in relation to helping disabled people in relation to medical situations as stroke and retraining from this. So it's a good tool in relation to that, and the mind is to address these technical and health problems and relation to the gait. So just to show here, it's this is the box which contains the Digital Pro, and yeah, just to mention, it's all kind of patients, like medical and geriatric and neurological, but also in what I mentioned before, what I used to work with, the primary return to sport. So just to show you a bit, this is the box which I'm sitting with. So it's not a big one. It's just like a very small suitcase, and inside that we have these very comfortable soles who are very easy to put in. These are figured with numbers in two numbers different. So this is covering 36, 37, and up to the maximum is 46, 47. So euro numbers. So it's quite flexible and very easy to work with in everyday clinical life. And then the nice part about it is that it's very mobile. So we just have these small chips that we put into the insole of the bottom of the sole, and as soon as that is registered with the app in the iPhone or the iPad, it just connects, and then it measures all the measures that are able to be measured in the application. So very accessible, very mobile, and very easy to use as a clinician. So I will put that down. There we go. And let's see here. So yeah, those who know a bit about the history of Digital Pro is that it originally came out of PhotoSmart, which was the original invention. That was a bit more of a stationary product, which we also have here at the clinic, with some of the basic features that we find in Digital Pro, but with the next generation put on top with more information and more calculations that give us an even more specific and precise possibility to evaluate the gait of our patients and clinics. So that is basically the product in a short way to present that. So going back to the actual concept of it, digital analysis to help shoe selection using AI-based motion analytics, putting on the big binoculars of today and looking into shoes selection and how Digital Pro are able to support us in our everyday life. First of all, when we talk about people who are active and who are running or walking or hiking or using their foot and their extremities as such as their primary load, or are loaded primarily in when they're doing activity, we also have to address one thing, and that is that the human as such, the human machine as illustrated here, is a whole. So we don't just walk or run or do our sports with only the feet or the knees. So the main idea is that when we address people clinically here, we address them as a whole and look into any situation of the body's composition and mechanical issues that can be, that kind of awaken flaw the original or best way to work mechanically. So that is the main aspect before we move on to actually looking into small details, accepting that everything in the body can more or less influence the ability for us as a functional unit to address the external forces of gravity and mechanical forces to our body. So that is one key element to focus on and to remember when we're addressing this very mechanical way. Of course, there are other aspects, as when we're talking with patients in pain or in issues regarded to pain science or the psychosocial aspects and of such characters. And of course, we don't neglect those, but today's subject is based primarily on the biomedical part of it. with a focus on the very mechanical and the very structural parts of the aspect of gait and running as such. So never forget the social, emotional, psychological aspects, but today, as such, the machine or the biomedical part is in primarily focus. So regarding shoes, so as we mentioned before, the body as a unit, it's a whole, and as such, the shoe acts as a buffer between our shoe and our body and the actual ground and the world. So it's a ground contact buffer of such. So it's the link between the ground and the body, and as such, it can also and influence the perception of the ground and our ability to respond to this. So we can be very much influenced by the shoe, or we can have little influence by the shoe, or we can have correct or incorrect support or failures from the choice of shoe. Just as a Formula One racer can address the choice of tires to the situation of the track, or to the weather, or to the general circumstances around the situation that they are working in. So at the same manner, we choose our shoes in relation to the ground, to the weather, to our composition, to the effort that we are going to do. We're going to run fast, go long, short, recreational, and all these aspects are relational, very important to as such to the aspect of how we choose our shoe in relation to that being the buffer between us as a mechanical unit and the ground and the contact in between that. So before we look into the shoe and the choices of shoe, I would like to just address some of the more performance-based, or if you can say performance, but more physiological parts of the aspect of running and walking. This now it says running economy, it could also be walking economy. So it's just like the moving or active economy of our body. So when we look into that from a general perspective, Kyle and Barnes and Kidding made this nice diagram in a few years ago in 2015, and it says that the running in this matter, also gait economy, is primarily based on how you're put together, like from the genetics. So we have our genetic pool that we are given from birth, and within that we have some metabolic efficiency. That is how our core temperature is, the muscle fiber type, the substrate utilization. These are things that we can that we are born with, but we also can influence on. As the same as the cardiorespiratory efficiency, we have some kind of VO2 max, we have the heart rate, we have the minute ventilation, that to some degree are something that we can manage a bit about, not that much, but and not as much as it can with the metabolic efficiency. But these are the aspects of the physiology as in general understood: the heart, the blood, the lungs, and the turnover of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And on the other side, we have like more the biomechanical, the neurological part of it, the ability to move, how the kinematics, the kinetics, our flexibility, how we build the anthropometrics of our body, and also like style and how do we move in general. And in this part also the neuromuscular efficiency, how our brain and our muscles relating to each other. Is there a good communication? Is there an optimal programming of these? And these are also things that we can address and train, and some of them are given us by birth as such. So we have some ground elements that we are given, and then we can kind of adjust them, and our body's ability to adapt to the stimuli that we're giving them throughout life, and also in specific training situations, are key to actually be able to increase or decrease, or maybe not decrease, but actually to influence the running economy. And what is doing that is the column in the middle with training. So this is training history, training type, training phase, quality versus quantity. How are we doing in general? So the key elements that are bringing increased efficiency in these four categories are the training insights. So at some point it's us doing the training, and at some points it's also the tools around the training that we do that can influence on this, and we will get back to that later on, and how the shoe can influence that. A part of running and walking, again, it's walking injuries, running injuries. Running is more related to injuries than walking, because we have this gradient that we have this fly phase where we hit the ground from our double flight time. So we increase our the structural impact to our body and the structure specific load by a factor of, depending on what literature, but in our experiences, around 3 to 3.5, maybe sometimes 4 times the body weight people typically are pulling gravity to their body in relation to their body weight. So, but some Danish guys made this really nice model again a few years ago about what are the aspects of running injuries. So we have like this model is built up about this point A, the structure specific load capacity when entering into a running session. So that is what is actually our body able to take in when we go into the running session, and that is based on how was our training in general, how is our diet, how did we have any previous injury. That is one of the big factors in relation to having a running related injury, that we were previously injured. Do we have diseases, how do we sleep, age, genes, and all these aspects that are related to point A have something to do with the structure specific load capacity when we go into the running session. And that can bring us into, if it's in a poor condition, a reduction in our structure specific load capacity during the running session. So depending on what we have and how we train and what we do, we can be in a good structure specific load capacity in a reduced structure specific load capacity. So that is how we are. And the other part in the section B is, how do we apply in the running session? What do we do in the running session? What is our body weight? How do we run? What kind of speed? What kind of terrain? How do we look? The anthropometrics, as we saw from Kidding, the running style, the running shoes, the surface, and all these aspects are put into a structure specific load per stride. So how we move in the running session is related to a specific load per stride. Very schematically set up. Of course, it's fluent from stride to stride, but in general, and as a mean value, we can put into this structure specific load per stride. And then multiplied by the number of strides, we have this influence that if we have a reduction in our structure specific load capacity in the session, we can have an overload or an excession of our capacity to the structure specific load. And that can relate into a possible running related injury. So that is the pathway of that we are with some capacity and we are with some load from our running. And that in general can lead into a risk of having a running related injury that is typically based on the situation of our condition and the situation of what and how and when we are running. So that is the major aspect. So that is the two key component that we are addressing when we're talking about running, walking economy, and running injuries, walking injuries. That these are some of the basic physiological, biomechanical, anatomical, physiological aspects that are, that's just the constants of our active life. So just to look into what is the difference between gait and running, just to be perfectly clear. In gait, we have this double contact time, and in running, we have this double flight time. So we have double contact in gait, and we have double flight in running. In gait, it's very typically that we have this 60-40 division between in contact and one stance phase. And in running, it can vary much more. So this is 65 or 35 is a very conservative one. I have very high speed runners are 25, 75 in relation to these situations with the ground contact and the one leg stance and the double flight time. So it's running is much more diverse from person to person, but in walking profiles, people tend to be around the 60-40 division. So that's just to clear about what gait and running is. So back to the main topic of tonight. Why do we need shoes? First of all, it's a tool for adaptation to the outdoor environment. As I mentioned in the beginning, it is the buffer between our general body and anatomic mechanics and then the external environment. So it's an adaptation or can help us adapt to that. It can support and comfort us in general, both in relation to the outer environment, but also into our kinematic possibilities. It can increase our performance and in bad manners also decrease our performance if we choose the wrong shoe. And of course, it can help us to have great looks. So it's always something that people, whatever, but it's not unimportant to accept that great looks also have a matter in that character. I know I just had a meeting with a representative from Brooks, and he also had more or less the same four pointers, and they have a lot of money used on how to design and how to make the shoe look in a way that people are feeling nice in regard to putting the running shoe on and go out and run. So it's something that we definitely have to accept and address, even though from a technical part, it's not maybe the most important thing. So when we talk about the shoe selection at our clinic, and we kind of address and help our patients, our clients here at the clinic, we kind of build up this pyramid where we kind of make a base for the most important part, and that is first of all comfort. So when you step into a shoe, you will have to feel comfortably in it. So it's like the hand in the glove, the shoe and the foot in the shoe. It has to be like it fits you well and good. It's not as such the feeling of softness, but more the feeling of comfort around that the foot is supported and aligned, and you have this feeling of a snug shoe that don't have too much laxity or too much space, or the sufficient part of space, the sufficient possibility, or as your own perception of I'm feeling comfortably in this shoe. So that is really the first parameter or the first important thing that we are addressing at the shoe. Because if you don't feel comfortable, any technical parameters won't be able to help you very much. And that is, of course, the next parameter. We all are in situation we will be able to or will need to have like kind of technical parameters as is illustrated by the Concept 2 shoe here, a very technical shoe. So that is like stability guidelines or gait lines. We can have the level of drop, like going from a very conservative drop shoe to a zero drop shoe, or all sorts of parameters that are related to the technical or the biomechanical execution of running or walking that can be important for this specific person. So that is on top of the comfort. So first of all, feel nice in the shoe, that you have the good comfort, and then you can put on technical parameters. And then of course at the top, it's nice to have a good look at the shoe. So that is the triangle of shoe selection priority here at the clinic. So you can have all sorts of ideas, but that is to make like 3 easy steps for us to address to our clients that they should focus on and that they can remember when they go into the shop. So what kind of running shoes or shoes in specific running shoes? We have this typology more than we have in gait. That is at least my opinion. We can always go into several subdivisions of shoes, but in general, I see 3 overall types of shoe. So we have like kind of the minimalist shoe, which is typically that it has 0 to low drop. and it has a minimum of technical applications. So we don't see any sorts of gates, gate line or heel caps or supportive issues. It's very, very close to just being an outer layer for the foot to support or protect from nails and glass that are on the ground or rocks as such that can influence you or cut you in the foot. So that's the main idea of it. The minimalist shoe is very minimal. And then we have the classical shoe here illustrated by Asics Gel Cayano, which is the more classical shoe that we know from decades and decades on, from the 80s and 90s and so on. It's typically a high drop shoe, and with high drop in a modern way, that is from 8 to 12, maybe sometimes 14 millimeters of drop. And the drops, if we don't know it, is the relation between the height of the heel and the forefoot. So the average degrading of height from the heel part of the shoe to the forefoot and the front of the shoe. So these are the classical shoes. And then we have in the last decade the what is called the maximalist shoe, starting off maybe primarily with a brand like the one that is shown, the Hoka shoe, which is typically known as a maximalist shoe, is that it has a very high stack height, and the stack height is the sole, the midsoles, the height of the midsole, which is typically more than 30 millimeter, and that gives us these kind of almost plateau shoes that we know from maybe the 70s or 80s ideas of modern or fashion shoes. But what is the idea of it is really to support and give this cushioning of the shoe. But what they also do, the maximalist shoe, is they kind of mix up the minimalist shoe with some of the components from the classical shoes, and then they put in their own idea. So what we see in the maximalist shoe is also very often has this 0 to low drop that we see in the minimalist shoe. But again, it also has some of the aspects from the classical shoe with gate lines and supports and stuff like that. And so it's kind of like the maximalist shoe is the latest the latest product that mixing up all the other products into one new way to look into the idea and of running shoes as such. And when we see into the market today, where we in maybe 10 or 15 years ago we saw that Hoka and we had Ultra and we had Topo as these brands who were typically with this big cushioning, today we see all brands more or less have these maximalist shoe and actually more and more as a part of their primary ideas of how to design a shoe. So these are the overall types of running shoes. And then we have the functionalities of these running shoe. And again, the natural, as little impact as possible to the basic function of the foot. So just as a cover to the foot. And in the classical shoe, we have and also for the maximalist shoe, we have these neutral and supporting shoe. Supporting shoe is what we knew like 10, 15 years ago as the anti-pronation, which was a bad word because pronation is actually good for us in running because it's one of the cushioning and supporting movements of the foot. So anti-pronation was not that good a word, so we don't see that anymore. But in relation to history, supporting and supportive shoes are in relation to this controlling the pronation speed is what we are talking more about today. And then we have these cushioning and supporting and guiding features to these shoes. And finally, we have this adaptation to the outer environment that we see as a function of the shoe. We have on the left side, we have this Innovate shoe. It's a trail shoe where we have these big almost nails or clots underneath the outer sole that can really grab onto the floor of the foot and or on the surface that we're running into the forest or in the sand or wherever we are in the mud, just to give a good hold to it. and minimize the slippering situations when we're running. And on the upper left corner, we have the outer sole of a classic Asic Gel Kayano. Again, a very conservative and very classical way of just giving us some support, not too much of it so it's getting too heavy as we see in the trail shoe, but enough to support us and give us a shoe that can last for these maybe 1,000 kilometers depending on our anthropometrics. And in the bottom left corner we see this is also an Asics, I think it's a meter speed, which has a very thin layer of outer sole. I think typically we are talking about 3 to 4 millimeters of outer sole to protect the midsole, and in these very fast shoes, the outer sole is at around 2 millimeters, and some might even be even less due to reduction of weight, and also to actually give the midsole the best effect. So these are, and as you see, I wouldn't go into a muddy slide on these shoes. These are really made to fast track on asphalt or on a tracksuit, on a field track. So these are these typical, with tons of variations within design and also other parameters that are the typical ones for running shoes as such. So when we look into the graduation of how a shoe is built, there is the classical shoes. I have chosen this Nike, I think it's the Alphafly, as it was one of the first one that put in this carbon fiber plate. But if we look into the classical running shoe and without a carbon fiber plate, you should address that we have the rubber outer sole. So it's made out of, when we look into the soles, we have like kind of 3 layers in a classical shoe. We have the rubber outsole, and then we have the midsole, and then we have the inlay sole. So what you see here is that the midsole foam layer and the carbon fiber plate and the midsole foam layer is in a classical shoe just one, but without the carbon fiber plate. So what happened when Nike went on and made this new one, that then they put in with another foam another type of foam that was more responsive. They also put in this carbon fiber plate. So in the typical carbon fiber plate or these racing or speed shoes, you have several more layers now. You have the rubber outsole, then you have a bottom midsole foam layer, and then you have the carbon fiber plate, then you have the midsole foam layer, and for some they also have the inlay sole. So you have like at least 4, and in most cases 5 sole layers that are put into the shoe. And then we have, of course, the upper, which is typically, and especially in these speed shoes, a knitted or 3D printed sock that almost just smoothly lies upon the foot and adapts to the foot more from the classical shoe that has its shape, and then we put our foot into this shape. So that is the idea of how the shoe is built up in general, with all sorts of design parameters on top of that. So that was much about the outer environment. So we have the classical buildup of the shoes and how they are built, and this is the selection of and looking into the shoe. So when we talk into support and comfort, there's been a tons of discussion throughout the year about what does the shoe do and what does the shoe not do. What can we expect from the shoe and what can't we expect? So all these arguments, especially around physios and trainers, and what we experience with people are getting injured or not injured, and what shoes that should support them and help them, that didn't support them and help them. It has been a big discussion, and especially in the last 10 years, there's been this paradigm that shoe didn't matter, and that is basically again because of the primary model where we saw around the what causes running injury. This Rasmus Østergaard Nielsen, a very good physiotherapist who is today a PhD or even maybe a professor in Aarhus University, made this study with 927 novice runners that he went out and set out for running throughout a year. And what they found is that depending on whether they were neutral or they were low in pronation or moderate foot pronation, it didn't matter what kind of shoe they put on in relation to getting a running related injury. So as the conclusion was that the result of the present study contradicted the widespread belief that moderate foot pronation is associated with an increased risk of injury among novice runners taking up running in a neutral running shoe. So, but what they also say, as typically, is that more work is needed to ascertain if highly pronated feet face a higher risk of injury than neutral feet. So what they actually say is that if you take a person who hasn't been able to run at all, then it doesn't really matter that much what kind of shoe you work and put on. And in my opinion, it makes really good sense, because there's a lot of other aspects of a really novice runner that mechanically, adaptively, or that has to adapt to the situation of running, where the running shoe is a very minor aspect of the full situation of the risk of getting a running related injury. So it makes quite good sense that they weren't able to actually address that, giving them a supportive shoe or running in a neutral shoe actually being moderate pronator did not relate or have a causality to the actual fact of getting a running related injury. So, but what they also say is that there might be something that we have to address when we look into these highly pronated feet, if there is something about that. So of course, the more problems that you have, the more diverse your problems are in relation to running or walking or hiking, the more you might be able to, or you should think it would be able to say that, well, maybe we can have something that can help us in relation to the situation of the body in that parameter. And that is actually what just a recent study might have addressed. So what they did in this study, I think it was in Australia that did it, they took again these runners, and then they found from a standard study that more or less illustrated the situation that Rasmus Østergaard Nielsen addressed in the previous study, that it really didn't, that it didn't really matter that much what kind of shoes you worked with when you were a moderate pronator. But what they saw in this study, when they actually readdressed this study, was that there might be some of the injuries that were related. So they took out the running injuries that were related in the group, or thought to be related very much to the pronation movement, too fast a pronation or too excessive pronation. And then they looked into what kind of shoes they kind of used and how it could affect them. And there might be something that could be related to that we can address and help some of these excessive pronators or excessive speed of pronation with running types of shoes that are designed in relation to support and address this increased pronation in range or in speed. So there might be something about these shoes and motion control that actually can be addressed. And I know for sure that also by talking with Rasmus, that he also has this opinion in person, that what we write and what we see is very structural, and say, well, we can't address anything, but what we have addressed is the mid or the low pronators, but for these excessive pronators in relation to speed and distance, there might be something that we can address in that relation with the shoe. So going from support and comfort into the performance issue. So especially in the last 5 or 6 years, performance and shoes has been a very big thing together. And I think today that we must accept that if we look into the record books of the International Athletic Federation, we can see that almost all world records or national or regional records from from 2015 to today are set on these distances. So there are no really old records standing on regional and in general world records on these longer distances, and that is very much for sure with something of the technical development of the shoes, again primarily starting with the Nike project in the late 10s. So just to show you one of the first studies of these shoes, that was when the Nike prototype, I think it was the Alpha Fly, was still a prototype. So Hokamer, he did this study of taking the classical Nike racing shoe and an Adiboost racing shoe, and then compared them to the Nike prototype. That's the NP, the Alpha Fly, and then he compared them in relation to the energetic cost in watts per kilo, and that is what we can also address as the running economy. How much energy do we use to move 1 kilo of body weight at these given speeds, 14, 16, and 18 kilometers an hour? So what we see is here that the green is the original Nike sports shoe or race shoe, and there we have the Boost, and here we have the Alpha Fly. So this is the wattage per kilo. So as you see, already at 14 kilometers, we have a decrease in wattage cost per kilo body weight with this shoe. And that just falls and falls. And at 18 kilometers, really clearly that you use less energy. And it is typically, again, clear, it's not like 25%. It's like in between, depending on what study you see, 3 to 4% that these specialized design performance shoe actually reduces your energetic cost. So, and that gives you the possibility to run faster with the same energy, or you can last longer because at the same speed, because you have more energy in that. So, and the 3 or 4% reduction in energetic cost is directly transferable to the reduction in time, more or less, for instance, for a marathon. So actually cutting off 3 or 4% of a marathon time, that is especially in an elite level marathon, quite interesting. And that's what we see with these sub 2-hour projects, where of course the shoe was not the sole perspective or the sole tool for the record, but definitely a central part of it. So when we look into performance, there's again a lot of discussion on how to design the shoe, and there are some specific studies that has been made on it, and specifically on this carbon plate and the foams that are put into it. There are some discussions on how to design the plate, and it seems that it's just not putting a carbon plate into the shoe. It's also about how we put in and how we design the carbon plate. So it has to be like in a kind of wave that gives us this effect. So we have this kind of rocker effect on our shoes. So we can't just put in a flat carbon plate and expect it to be very responsive and give us a lot of energy. So it seems like if the curved and giving us the rocker stride or the rocker look of the design of the shoe is what gives us these ideas of an improved propulsion. So, and that is one of the things that we are talking to some of the experts within. That is actually, it's not the carbon plate. The carbon plate is there more to stabilize the foam, because the foam is getting so thick and so massive in relation to giving this rebound. So the carbon plate has a more central part as a part of a supportive tool for the foam to actually keep it in line. But also, of course, it has some flexibility and some rebound in it, but it's more or less the foam that are giving these incredibly increased performances in relation to energetic costs. So Now we've been around the technical part of the shoes and what kind of shoes we have, and now we go back into the assessment of our patients and how we address them. So we have this person coming in with a running or walking or trekking issues that they want to address or have addressed. So they have issues in regard to making a long hike or whatever they do, and for that assessment from us as a clinical person, the first thing is that we do a clinical assessment. So we do the hands-on and we test the physical mobility and stability parameters, and then we actually kind of build up a hypothesis of what might be the case of this. And then when we have these address these situations or issues that we think might be crucial for the relation between their discomfort or injury or lack of performance, then we go into the more technical part or the technical tools, and that is where we use the high-speed video, slow motion video to see how the actual gait is or run is performed. And that's where we put in the Digital Pro as the new boy in town or the new child in the class that can give us these aspects of what is happening within the shoe on relation to the gait patterns and different issues that we will address later on in 3 cases that I have brought tonight. So clinical, technical, and then we go out practically and test the different shoes that we here at the clinic. We have chosen to have some shoes that people can feel, not that we sell shoes as such as our primary business. We will sell them if people want them, but we have chosen to have like 4 kind of different shoes. So we have a New Balance, very classical shoe in neutral and in a controlled model, an 860 and 880 model, if someone knows that. And then we have chosen also to have a very soft Ultra shoe and a very controlled Ultra shoe, which specifically different from other shoes, that they can only, Ultra has a vision of only building 0 drop shoes. So that's their main product line, is that all their shoes on 0 and drop. So the heel and the forefoot is at the same height. So what we can do in our clinic is that we can go and say, well, try this kind of shoe, try that kind of shoe, and try to feel the difference. And we can see what kind of difference does this use or do to your running or the patterns of your gait as such. So in my opinion, before we go into the case stories, shoes are also a bit like food. We eat diversely, so we also should use diversely shoes. The top picture here is a picture of my shoe selection at home. At the left, we have my running shoes, and on the right, we have my everyday shoes or sandals for walking at home. And in the mid part here, we have all the kind of different inlay soles that I use more or less. They are standardized, they are customized, they are leather and artificial and 3D printed and personally made. And we have all these kind of situations. And of course, I'm a bit biased because I live from advising and counseling on this. But I think the main perspective of this is that we need, or in my opinion, it's not bad to have different kinds of types of shoes, both in relation to what kind of surface, but also just to have like kind of 2 road shoes, 2 shoes types for the different situations that we run in, and use them without or with customized insoles. So diversity, shoes that adapt to the situation, and then use these supplementary measures if necessary. So this is very much aligned with what we kind of eat. So in the last part here, I'll go through 3 cases that I had where I used the Digital Pro to specifically help with both the case, but also in relation to the shoe selection. So this is Jørgen. He had a walking project. He sold his company, and then he had to kind of use his time for something. So he chose to go from Copenhagen to his summer residence in Spain. That was 2,500 kilometers on his barefoot in walking in 3 months. So he constructed this vehicle, or jockey thing that he could put on his belt and then walk along. And he came to me because he knew that 2,500 kilometers was a bit. So he wanted to optimize the walking and minimizing the risk of injury and or discomfort, or increase the comfort while while walking. And he had he had chosen this Hoka Bondi shoe, and it was good, and he was feeling comfortably, but he thought there might be something that we could address. So we addressed it. And what we did is that we took this initial analysis with the Hoka Bondi, and we saw some of the we looked into some of the differences that we can see in his analysis. So we saw here that he had some issues around the rotation that was different from left to right when he was walking. We saw some differences in the steppage of his left and right foot that were relating to the rotation. And what was the most important part in as such in this matter was that we can see that his muscular activity interpreted by the Digital Pro was that he used his right side much more aligned than his left side. So walking, maybe this was not a problem just walking around at home, but doing 2,500 kilometers, even small issues can make a big problem at the end. So we talked about what kind of shoes might be able to support him in this. So he had the Hoka Bondi, and then we asked him to try and walk in the EcoBiome 2.0. And this is the measurement from the EcoBiome 2.0. So what we see from the rotational part of the foot progression angle is not very much different. His clearance was somewhat higher, but what is maybe related to this was that the shoe design is very different, but the alignment of this steppage was a bit better. And in general, he was getting a much more aligned and aligned muscular work activity when he walked in the EcoBiome 2.0 in relation to what we see in the Hoka Bondi. So the advice was that he, from this aspect, should more use the EcoBiome 2.0. But as he was really fond and happy about the Hoka Bondi, he chose to have both shoes on his way. And talking about diversity just a few slides ago, that was really saluted by me, because that's the way to go with it. And I even asked him to, you can also have like a third kind of shoe that is very much different from these if you want to, because then you can have like three kind of stimuli to your locomotoric system throughout the whole walk. But then again, he said, well, I have to carry it. So he chose to have these two as a part of his luggage and working tools for the walking trip. So another case here is Lone. Lone was a marathon runner, is a marathon runner, and she came to me with knee and general body issues. And as a part of this whole-centered approach that we begin with in understanding how the whole body is the running body or the walking body, we kind of address these issues that she had in the body. And then we kind of targeted some of the things that we can see around specifically the running part that could give her some help from a theoretical part, but also in practical from the perception from her on what it meant to her running. So we had some of these targets. That was one, to facilitate and increase her cadence and reduce her initial contact and overall contact time, and then move the attack point from heel base to a more midfoot oriented landing type. So this was the three characters that we really wanted to address with Lone. And what we did was, she came with a classic Asics Gel Cayano. That was the shoes that she came in with, and we did a test in October 14th and last year when we wanted to address it, and she was going to run Copenhagen Marathon here in May, so she was in good time to alter or change some of the things that she felt was all the time annoying her or addressing her as not comfortably in relation to running. So what we saw in that running analysis, that her strike pattern was clearly a very heel striker, and the attack angle was 18 to 16.5, and she had this impact force of 1700 Newton, which was approximately around these 3 times her body weight. And there were some aspects around these. So what we saw is that in the target of what we wanted to do in the late measurement we did in February 28th, where we changed her shoe from the Asics Gel Cayano to the Ultra Paradigm 6, and not only changing the Ultra Paradigm 6, so she went actually from a very classical shoe with, I think, 12 millimeters drop or maybe 10 millimeters drop to a 0 drop shoe. That is a very massive change of graduation in shoe. So what we also did, that we addressed the change of activity or the change of running style to increasing her steps or increasing the cadence as much as possible. So you can see here from the initial movement or registration in the Asics to the February measurement in the Hoka. In that period, she was really working hard on running style and increasing her cadence and trying to get more onto the forefoot or reducing the heel attack. She actually did increase her cadence from 168 to 178. That decreases the specific impact forces to her body, as you can see here from 17 to 16, and from 1750 to 1617. And also, what is important, increases the attack angle from 18 to 11 and 16 to 12 degrees. So she's very much faster into the whole foot and the support of all the foot and all the cushioning and the mechanical cushioning of the foot that is much earlier addressed by reducing the attack angle. And we see that with also the reduction of the impact forces, that because of some issues in the body, was even the slightest reduction of that could support her general issues around the knee and the hip as well. And one of the aspects also was the duration of the attack. So we tend to address 2 parts of the stance time. We have the duration of attack, where we are landing, and then we have the propulsion. So that was at the beginning in the measurement at the Cayano from 47 and 43. Now we reduced it to 41 and 41 in general. So we balanced it much more and we reduced it, and thereby also increased the time on the ground from propulsion at 52 and 56 to 58. So we have now a much more aligned situation and a better situation where we use more time to propulsive movement and not so much on attacking, and also reducing the impact loads. So that is one way to where the shoe was a part of the whole idea of how to reduce the stress and the improve the performance capacity of Lone, by not only changing the shoe, but also working with the capacities within the shoe of making it easier to increase the cadence and making it easier to change the strike pattern as such. This is the last case, Carsten. He is 56 years, male. 3 years ago, he had this distal fibular fracture, which is the leg bone, the small leg bone. And since then, he had these functional problems with swelling after activity. I saw him in the clinic, and we could see that there were some matters that were a bit odd. He had previously had this full-scale running analysis with Qualisys, where we put the specific dots on the body, and then we film them with super speed, high-speed cameras with another business here in town that we compete a bit against. But what they saw was that they saw this kind of, there might be something with indicated pelvic instability, so he had to train this. But what they didn't see was that they couldn't see what was happening within the foot, and that was very much related to his situation, that there was something wrong in the foot in relation to some of the mechanical issues that was going on within the foot and all these bones and in relation to the joint forces of the ankle and the foot in general. So these were assessed clinically, but then we also wanted to address what is actually happening when you walk and run in the shoe with these issues that you've had. So he used to run 40 to 50 kilometers. Now he was around 10 to 15 kilometers and wanted to go back to 40 to 50 kilometers of running again. So what we did was that, again, here comes a guy with a Hoka shoe that he was really nice and felt good about. And he had chosen this shoe because it had a lot of cushioning. It was really comfortable, but he still had these issues around the technical part of the running. So with the swelling in the leg. So we took him on and then made a running analysis of him. And as you see, there is the median. The median values here is the black line, and here are the green line are the standard deviations of all the steps. So this is deviation from step to step, and here we have the black side, which is the median. So there are something about the left side that could correlate with the swelling and in regard to maybe some lack of control or something that could be targeted or argued to be something that more or less could be a part of the situation. So what we did is that we tried to give him an Ultra Paradigm 6. And again, I'm not advocating for Ultra as such. I'm not supported or anything by them, but that is the shoe we have. So we gave him on a shoe that in a lot of characters mimics the shoe of the Hoka, but just with a bit of change. It has zero drop again. Hoka Clifton has a bit of drop, and it has some other guiding principles than that the Clifton has. And you see, this is a measurement that is done exactly at the same day, just 15 minutes later from the first measurement. And we see a whole other alignment between the median and the standard deviations here. So again, he was really feeling comfortable in the Hoka, but he was also really feeling comfortable in the Ultra, and he was feeling the support that the Clifton, even though he felt it was good, he could feel that the Paradigm 6 was supporting him even more. And in relation to the measurements that we can see, that he also saw, but this is obvious, there is a totally change in how I use my foot. I can feel it when I run, but I can also see it in relation to how I address the ground and how stable this shoe is in relation to the Hoka Clifton. But and he ended up actually buying a pair of these Ultra Paradigm 6 because he felt good and he could see the idea of it. So, but as in Jørgen's case, he kept his Hoka Clifton, and again in the role of diversity to say, well, it's not a good not a bad thing to have something to change in, because even though it looks as if it's a bad shoe with the higher standard deviation on the Hoka than in the Ultra, it also gives some input and stimuli to the body and the central nervous system having different issues. So back to one of my not gurus, but one of the guys that I know has written this book, Human Locomotion, who has some really good thoughts about gait and running. Thomas C. Michaud, a Canadian chiropractor. He says that rule number one is that the bottom line with all the research on running shoe prescription is that you are always the best judge of which running shoe is right for you. And I can't argue any more than him on that aspect. That is the most correct way to do it. We can have any shoe designers saying that this is the shoe, this is the correct shoe. I have seen for the last 20 years several fabrics or manufacturers trying to say that this is now the aspect, is they've been 3D printed, it is correlating to your way that you work, and it adapts, and that's the right way to do it. We are still at the same place with shoes. It's how you feel it supports you, and then there are some technical parameters that we can definitely use in different situations, but not in overall saying this kind of shoes are good for anyone who runs, or this kind of shoe is good for anyone who walks or hikes as such. So it's always adapting to the individual situation that is the most important, and then we can have these paradigms or parameters that are supporting us in general on the side, and doing our critical choice or our critical advices for the customers or the clients in general from our clinical aspect. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to this svada of technical and clinical assessment of shoe choices. I know that Digital has future webinars coming up, and you can contact them on contact@digital.com, or write Rana at this mail, rana.santu@digital.com. So thank you so much. And here are some of the references.
Thank you so much, Ivan. I don't see any questions, so if you guys have some questions, would you please type them in, or just indicate so I could invite you to participate, and you could voice your questions. And I've added my email on the chat. So please, in case you're interested in a certificate of attendance, please feel free to email me, and I will be sending you the certificate of attendance. Or if you would like to have a copy of the presentation, I can send you that as well upon request. Moreover, if you need any information about the product, feel free, please, to contact me. Let's see, Craig. Very informative, thank you. Have you used the Digital Pro for golf shoe selection at all? Ivan, I leave it to you.
I personally haven't yet, but we have a big collaboration with one of the biggest golf clubs, so we are starting to use it now. So far, we used the last session we had. They wanted to have like another setup, but we have talked with them to use this for trying to address some of the issues, because it is really some of the aspects that we see in golfers, because they walk so many miles golfing and also standing a lot. So we are addressing it, and we are going to work with it a lot. Yeah.
I see Theodorus is asking, have you tested 3D printed shoes?
I have seen them, and I have talked a lot with some of the people who are working with it. And I know one of the aspects of 3D printed shoes is that they are still very heavy when they're done as such, whole 3D printed. I know where they are now with the technology is that they 3D print some of the shoe and then they collect them. And I know from a price point of view, it's very expensive still in regard to the classical way of building shoes. I have seen some of my patients having these 3D printed shoes because they are just want to be first movers, and I still see a lot of things that can be related to, for instance, they are very heavy still. So I'm not really, it's not there yet, but it's interesting to see what's going on in the market, because we know 3D printed insoles that we actually also do at the clinic. So yeah, but there are some issues around actually 3D printing a whole shoe. But in theory it should work, but I know in practice and in sales they have some issues in regard to making it a sustainable business.
Okay, there's a question from Jan. Hello, Ivan. Do you sometimes combine shoes with MTM insoles or recommend?
MTM, I don't know what MTM the shortage of is that if it's
Jan,
MTM,
do you want to type, or would you like to join us?
make the measure that that's so we do customized insoles. So we definitely use this measurement as a part of our consultancy. So what we do is we have three types of customized insoles. We have a standardized plate made of thermoplast that we can mold ourselves. That's not very often we use that anymore. That was a classical way of doing it. So we are doing a kind of sole where we have the dynamic measurements, just like what we do from what we see with measurements from the Digital Pro, and that measurement is sent off to Belgium, where Materialize is printing a shoe, or not a shoe, an insole that is specifically designed in relation to those dynamic measurements that the person have done on the pressure plate that they're walking on. And one of the ideas of, or one of the things that we have used the dynamic plate for before was also these running and gating and analysis. But one of the aspects that we always addressed was this is in barefoot. We can't see what's going on inside the shoe. So when I saw that the PhotoSmart in the beginning, or now the Digital Pro came to market, it was really, yes, this is the tool I really need to actually be able to see what is actually mechanically going on and how are the forces distributed within the shoe. So that makes it much more credible for me to say, well, this is going on in the shoe, maybe you should do like this. So, but again, it doesn't take out the pressure plate, because we can use the pressure plate and then we can use the Digital Pro, and then we combine the information to actually grasp a bigger picture of how to support them. And in relation to the insole, we can add some of the information that we see from within the shoe to also the production design of the 3D printed sole that we can get from Materialize. And then in the final, we also have another one that is 3D printed from a 3D scan. That's a Danish product called Soles. So there we give the same. They only have the constant picture, taking a picture of the foot, and then they relate to what the symptoms are. And in some issues, we can see that lacks a bit of information, and there we put on the measurements from the Digital Pro, and then we can in a communicative way say, well, it looks like this is that is the static picture of the foot, that is the symptoms that they have, but what we see is that I think the relation to correction should be more like this, because we have this picture. So that was a long answer, but yes. And yes, Jan, it's RS foot scan that is now Materialized.
There's a question as well, and Jan is typing, so I'll read the question first. So it's from Ramsey, and he's saying, have you used the insoles in multi-directional sports such as tennis, squash, hockey?
No. But I'm looking forward to the upgrades with jumping and all the things that are coming.
Yes, the thing with Digital Pro and what is different basically from PhotoSmart, there are a lot of differences, but one of the main differences is that the Digital Pro is upgradable and easier to upgrade, and there are a lot of modules that are going to be added in. One of the modules is being tested right now, and it's coming to light to the market very soon, and it's the jump model, which will be able to test people in different sports playing environment like dancing, tennis, squash, hockey, and other sports. So yeah, it's in the test phase right now, but it will be coming to the market soon, and Ivan will be among the first people to really do the clinical tests with it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, because of course it could be nice to do that and grasping some technical features from these sports as well. But as it is right now, it's more these static movements or the continuous movements like running and walking that we can see, because we have these measurements that are easy to take out. So, but I'm really looking forward.
And just to say also that going up the steps or the stairs or doing runs and circular motion, it really does not interfere with the measurements being taken. Yeah.
And again, as I'm saying, I'm a bit biased because we work with really motivated, active people who are typically runners or hikers and stuff like that. So if you work with neurological patients or medical patients with strokes and stuff like that, I think there's a lot of benefit from also working that, especially in relation to progress. As you see with the case where we had Lone, the changes are minor. It's really small changes, but these are small changes that are important because there's a lot of repetition of a movement. And I think the aspects for instance, a medical or neurological patient will be the same, but I think it will be much more clear to see in a rehabilitation situation that this is the start level. This is 14 days later. This is 3 weeks later. And working with these measurement in that context, I think would be very beneficial as well, and not only as a sport supportive tool.
Especially using the evolution tool, which compares one measurement to another, one analysis.
The comparison model is really, really nice.
And I wanted to say that recently we have added a product that works with Digital Pro. So it's basically pediatric insoles, so they can be used from age 6 or 7. Size is available from 30 to 35, and then 36 is the start of the Digital Pro, which means that now analyses are being also run on children, especially with pediatric problems like valgus, children valgus. So this is going to be really a good tool for you to use. Concerning the certificate of attendance, so I'll be sending those to you next week together with the presentation. If you're interested, just send me an email to request it. And I've added here in the chat a link to our Livestorm page where you can see all the new webinars and you can register to them. So just click on this link, save this link, and click it from time to time to see what's new. We're going to be starting recurring webinars, which means it's always going to be the second Thursday of the month, but we will be starting in September. So, and every month we take a different pathology and we explain the parameters one by one. We go deeply into the analysis so that you could really see the analysis, what's the difference from one pathology to another, and how we can recommend the treatment and follow up a treatment based on this. I don't know if there are any more questions. Okay, so seems no more questions. I really want to thank you all for being with us, for joining us tonight. We hope that you've liked the webinar, and looking forward to more webinars by Ivan as of September, hopefully. And looking forward to your presence with us and joining us in more webinars, and perhaps also taking part, participating. If you use Digital Pro or Podosmart, please send us your questions. You can send me by email, and then we could be answering your questions in future webinars. Thank you so much, everybody. We wish you a very good evening. Thank you, Ivan, and looking forward to seeing you next webinar.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.